Hello. Welcome to Red Hoop Talk. I'm Roy from the Ute Nation of Louisiana,
Hi, Roy.
standing on the land of the first Californians. My thanks, many
That
thanks.
he can't pronounce, and that's why he said it that way.
Because I don't want to say one name because I'll get DMs from other tribes that want their name recognized.
So let's say it with Roy this time. Kumeyaay,
Gabrielino, Shumash, Tongva.
Chumash are a little bit north of where you are, I believe.
They will tell you otherwise too, but yes.
Oh, will they? Okay. All right. All y'all out there in California, we're grateful to you. I'm Shannon O'Loughlin. I am a citizen of the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma and the executive director of the Association on American Indian Affairs, who's bringing you this wonderful show, Red Hoop Talk. And I'm standing on the original, the land of the original peoples of the Piscataway. Piscataway peoples. So thanks for joining us in our first show of
2021, the 21st century. Finally,
what?
We're actually in it. The 21st century. We've actually finally made it into it.
Oh, I thought last year was. No, Roy.
Well, 2020 to 20. Yeah, you're in the 20th. That's still the 20th century. And now you're into the 20th
century is the.
But we've never gone into it, is what I'm saying. We've never gone into the 21st century. We've been repressed.
20 years, Roy. 20 years. Someone help me out here.
I'm not talking about the maths. I'm talking about the reality of where we're at today. We're finally going to make it into the 21st century.
No, we're still not quite there yet. We still got a little ways to go, Roy.
I think this is our year. We're going to be contenders.
Okay. Yes. It's going to be a good year. And I won't talk about the number of growing positive COVID cases in Indian country. I won't talk about the outgoing activities of the current administration, opening up lands for exploitive industry. I won't talk about any of that.
Why not?
Because it's going to be a good year, right?
It is going to be a good year, but that doesn't mean we can't talk about the bad things that are going on.
Let's. I like your vibe. Let's talk about a couple of good things. I want to thank a couple of people, if you don't mind.
Fire.
Go ahead. April Skinnis has been, who's from the Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma. She's been a great help to us. She's always announcing Red Hoop Talk on Facebook. She's sending out notifications to the Cal State University Long Beach alumni directory. Thank you, April. Thank you, April. Reminding people that we're out here. And I want to thank Kim Metler. If you remember Kim Metler.
Yes, I do remember.
Yeah, Mandan Hidatsa Arikara Nation. She was our very first guest, and I think she's come on as a co-host also. She put out this great fundraiser for the Association on American Indian Affairs for her birthday on Facebook. So support Kim, support the association, support her fundraiser on Facebook. And I want to just thank folks for remembering us here in the new year. Hey, friends on the chat room, tell us who you are and where you're coming from.
Happy New Year, JD. JD's in the chat already.
Always good to see JD, who is also Ute, and you've probably got a cousin who's our guest tonight. So hopefully you'll have some good questions for him. What else we got, Roy? What are we going to talk about?
I don't know. What else do you see going on other than, like you said, the numbers rising and craziness in the good old U.S. government?
The government.
The takeover. Boy, they sure did mess that one up, didn't they?
that freak, with the.
Oh man,
Buffalo.
I don't know. I don't understand how they're like political Raider fans. Is that what they are?
I don't know.
I mean, I don't know. I didn't understand it. I
They're
saw the whole.
of America.
I mean, what were they thinking? That like a handful of people were going to take over the government or some shit? I
Well, I
mean,
don't know. I mean, we all already know that if that was us with those,
oh, we'd have been dead on those steps right there. The ones that they were all standing, we'd have been dead on those steps.
yeah. So I'm
In this day and age, yeah.
I'm grateful. Well, in any day and age, since now and previous.
Well, we did get in there ourselves once or twice.
The Department of Interior building.
A different building, yeah, but we did get into the one of the departments one time,
Yeah.
you know, but yeah, not the Capitol during the counting of the votes for the freaking certify the election.
We're just trying to get, land that had been stolen and get services that were promised through treaty and other,
because people were starving and shit. Yeah, it was a little different situation from. We're privileged and we want our guy. We don't like the score the referees gave us.
Yeah. And we're white and we want to, maintain a white nation.
Yeah, that was something else. They're running around with their racist flags and their racist shirts and all of that, and it was allowed. It goes to show you still how deep the racism is in our own government. That white privilege that's still out there, because they're taking selfies with these guys and they were just kind of welcomed in, I mean, at one point when it got to where they were going to breach the door where the actual officials were, held up, freaking cowering underneath their seats and shit, I mean, that's when finally one of the agents there said, enough's enough. You come through that window, I'm gonna blast you. And he did. And then, that was I guess the first person that was killed. And then those people killed another guard.
Yeah.
I think they hit him in the head with a fire extinguisher or something. And he passed away. And I guess 5 of them total died, huh?
Yeah.
What a mess. What a mess. And all for what? For conspiracy theories, I can't believe that it's gotten to a point where people are buying into this crap, these conspiracy theories. It's
you know what? I'd like me some conspiracy theories over.
But for like entertainment, right? Like like in a grocery store and you look at the National Enquirer on the shelf, right? And you see the alien boy that that Hillary Clinton had with Arnold Schwarzenegger's love child or whatever, that kind of crap.
Yeah,
it's that kind of funny, But these people are taking this stuff seriously, taking it to another level, and getting their asses shot.
I guess the only conspiracy theory I've always thought was valid is really not a theory at all. It has to do with wealth and who has all the wealth and power in the world.
Well, that's not a conspiracy theory. I mean, that's a known fact that
that a very small handful of people have all
the control that. Yeah. I mean, we've always been at the bottom end of that, and we've had to pay the price for them to control and continue to gather more money for their offspring.
What's that freaking matter then? Who is a president right now?
You're right. It actually doesn't. But
core of my skepticism, Roy.
I understand the core of your skepticism. I understand that. I do. I get it, and I understand. The Rockefeller, Rothschild money, all that stuff. The real top of the white power echelon. Of where the power is housed and the real financial wealth of the world is gathered. I get it. I hear you. And I know it, and it is kind of a conspiracy theory in and of itself. But
It's not a theory.
What they've done is they've created, in this nation anyway, they've created a system for them to utilize their money to gain even more power, which is the lobby powers that are out there.
Yeah.
And I just saw some legislation that went out that says that they're looking to put legislation in that will actually overturn the Electoral College. So that's one of their racist tools that they've been using that is actually being rebutted. So that tells me that there's something amiss going on in there, that that maybe we are getting some type of control of the levers of power.
There's a mist.
A mist.
There's a mist going on.
There's a power, or there is something amiss. But no, they if they can start to roll back things like that, like get rid of money, get money out of politics, and get the money out of or to get this racist electoral college thing taken away, then maybe there's some chances for some things to happen. But constitutional, I think it takes, what is it? Is it called a constitutional amendment that has to be put in place? And it's like everybody's got to agree to it in order to like get rid of something like.
I don't know. What do you think of my earrings?
What's that?
Do you like my earrings?
Yeah.
Yeah, I made these earrings.
Did you?
Back in the day that I knew you, back in the day we were powwowing. I made these.
Oh, powwowing. Uh-huh. Back in the early days.
Back in the early days. See how I changed the conversation. Okay.
Well, yeah, I mean, because there's some serious stuff going on, and it's going to affect Indian country. I mean, everything does. How much is it going to affect us? We're going to get to talk about all this stuff tonight. That's cool, because we've got a great guest who we already did our audio video check, and we started some really good conversations right off the bat. So this is going to be a great guest and a great show. And there's so much amiss going on out there. But by the way, yes, Colleen said nice earrings. They are nice earrings. They are.
Colleen, hey, I have to introduce everyone to Colleen Medicine. Everyone say hi to Colleen Medicine. She's joining us on Facebook. She's the association's new program director, and
hey, Colleen, good job.
There in Michigan, and we're so glad to have her. And we got to bring her on the show sometime. Yeah.
There is a DOI meeting tomorrow on changes to Indian land, tribally and Indian land ownership.
Well, give us the link, Lance. Give us some info so we can.
Yep. Hey, Lance, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, Lance. All right.
All right.
Shall we do it?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. All right. So tonight we are being joined by Ernest House Jr. You want to bring him up there, Roy?
Yep. Hey,
Ernest,
welcome to Red Hook Talk. How you doing, buddy?
Good. Mike the Guven the Loyak. Hello, my friends in Ute. Thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, thank you
for joining us, Ernest. I know you're currently Senior Policy Director at Keystone Policy Center in Colorado. You're coming to us from Denver, right?
Correct.
And you are Ute Mountain Ute.
Mm-hmm.
And we were just talking about how you had to take a COVID test before you went home, and we're talking a bit about the pandemic and how the Ute Mountain Ute were how y'all were dealing with it. So how are things out there in Denver and back home?
Well, it's interesting. I spent a lot of half of my time in Denver and then back home. I currently, as you said, I work for the Keystone Policy Center, which is a nonprofit headquartered in Keystone, Colorado. Nothing to do with the Keystone Pipeline. Just want to be very clear with that. I have to tell, I want to make sure to start that out with when I talk to different tribes. So we have an office in Denver and an office in DC. I'm out of the Denver office, and my family and I have been here for about 20 years now, but I still go about, pre-COVID, about 2 or 3 times a month down back home to southwestern Colorado, to Ute country. This is all Ute country, but back to my home res. And that was interesting. I mean, before going back down, especially for our communities, rural reservation communities like mine, I was nervous of, we stayed in our home for the long time, and then I have a home back on the reservation, so I went back and stayed just there and quarantined. But before I even made the trip, which is about a 7 to 8 hour drive from Denver to southwestern Colorado to Ute Mountain, that's what I went through the process to do. But yeah, my community is doing great. We've had an uptick in numbers, like a lot of other communities have seen. Obviously, the priority to our elders and our native language speakers, and now we're starting to see the vaccine being rolled out in Indian country. I work with my tribe on COVID response as well, and the broadband need. On my reservation, we don't have broadband infrastructure. We're a food desert. We don't have a grocery store. The nearest grocery store is about 15 miles to the north off reservation. So there's a lot of services that need to be provided during this last year. And, it's fascinating. They've done such a great job. The community has done just such a great job dispersing food, support out to homes, 675 homes on a reservation between two communities, White Mesa, Utah, and Toyoak, Colorado. And the tribal leadership has implemented some policies of checkpoints, curfews, trying to limit the interaction of to help our community survive when we're identified as a community that has a high rate of diabetes, cardiovascular disease, all these other things that could implement if COVID has a big hit. So they're doing, I think, the best they can, and I'm looking forward to 2021.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Oh, good to hear. Good to hear. So I heard you say that, it's all Ute land. And I think there's some folks in Colorado and from Colorado.
Yeah, I told you. I told you
about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to make sure it start out that way, right? Or else my own tribe is going to come after me.
See, so we go big. We just go big, right? Because so when you go back home to Louisiana, to cattle land, right? Our story is Texas was ours. All of it. Mm-hmm. All of it was ours. So it's like everybody's land was real big.
There's stories of Choctaw being all the southeast and over into Texas, and some people.
Yeah.
You just keep going until the waters are there.
That's exactly right. And I mean, I'm sure, like both of you, I get calls all the time about land acknowledgements, and I, especially living in the Denver metro area. I mean, I will say, and I have said this before, and I even helped create this agreement in Colorado when I was at the state to recognize 48 historic tribes of Colorado. 46 of those were forcibly removed 150 years ago to make way for cities like Denver and Colorado Springs and Fort Collins and all these huge metro areas along the Front Range. These are tribes like the Pueblos, the 19 Pueblos in New Mexico, the Cheyenne, the Arapaho, the Kiowa, the Comanche, Black Bear, I mean, all across the board. And so I've had the huge honor to work with Cheyenne and Arapaho tribes on things like the Sand Creek Massacre, which still is something that we need to raise awareness about and recognition of. So I say Ute land, and then also pivot and say that, all of Colorado, historic tribes of Colorado.
That's where I've left it.
Oh, for sure. So what is it like there? Because and y'all are related to Shoshone and Paiute and
mm-hmm.
the other Ute nations there.
The Shoshones.
Can you talk a little bit about the relationships and who your tribe is, and what is it like to be Ute?
No, absolutely. Well, thank you. Ute is
saying, without me making a joke about that. What is that? A John Massey movie? Ute.
What is a Ute? The two Utes? Yeah. My cousin Vinny. I hear that. I used to have that in my office saying, "What is a Ute?" It's funny. And then you come out here to Colorado or in the West, and you see Ute Pass, Ute Trail, Ute Creek, and so a lot of people may not know that. So the Utes, we call ourselves Nuchu. In our language, it means the people, right? And we have called what we call Colorado home, or Colorado now, state of Colorado. We've called this area home for the last 10 to 12,000 years. Now, if you ask us, we've been here since time immemorial, and that usual process. But I think that part of that is trying to educate the newcomer that's just moving to Denver, because Denver's this cool place to go where all the cool kids are moving to, and really, really overpriced and expensive now to even live here. But the point is to the person who's always grew up here or is born here, that there's a huge connection with Ute culture and history. We're the people of the mountains. We were several different bands. Those bands consolidated to make up 3 tribes today. The Ute Indian tribe, which is in Fort Duchesne, Utah, they were forcibly removed out of the state in the 1870s. Then you have the Ute Mountain Ute Tribe, which is my tribe. We're one band. We're the Weemanooch band. And then you have the Southern Ute Tribe, our sister tribe just to the east of us near Durango, Colorado, and they're the Moach Capote band. And so those several bands consolidated and make up the 3 Ute tribes today. But as you said, Shannon, we share a very distinct dialect, a language between Shoshone, Paiutes, and also, we speak a Uto-Aztecan language, which also means that we have a connection to tribes in Mexico and the Aztecs. And so there's a lot of trading going on through that area. And especially if you come down to the Southwest, people have maybe heard of Mesa Verde National Park and the ancestral Pueblo people, which, are relatives to the Pueblos today and Hopis and Zuni. And so it's, you see all of that around the Southwest, and you would think, well, how did the Utes get here? Well, we were forced to go here, our reservation. We were forced to come here. We had a lot of different areas up in the Rocky Mountains. We would utilize the whole mountain range to get what we needed and survive. But now we have Ute Mountain Ute Tribe resides on a 600,000 acre reservation in 3 states, Colorado, Utah, and New Mexico. So that's where we are today.
Wow. And what is the economy? Y'all have casinos. That's what everyone asks first.
Right. Of course. Indian gaming has been the biggest economic boom of Indian country, right, in the last 40 years. And I think that we have definitely been a part of that. We have a gaming operation, but we also have several other enterprises, a construction company, a tribal park. We actually manage a tribally managed 125,000 acre park on the backside of Mesa Verde National Park, which also has ancestral Pueblo ruins. We do tours every year. I grew up as a tribal tour guide there when I was younger. And so we've just really emphasized, obviously, tribal economy, but we're also in a community that's big agriculture. But our tribe is the largest employer in our county, and same thing for the Southern Indian Tribe. They're huge in their county. So it's, we really do. We have a lot of interest in a lot of economic development, but like other tribes, we want to see more. We're hoping that this next administration will bring that.
Yeah, and you've been involved in a lot of policy work, right? And a lot of policy work that's connected to culture, but then also some really unique things. But before we get off into current stuff, I'd like to, unless I'm, Roy's over there being quiet, and I apologize. Sometimes, I can be one of those nasty women just talking all the time.
Oh,
I'm sorry, Roy.
No, go ahead. Believe me, I'm not at a loss for words when I need to speak. You know me, I'll speak.
All right. Okay. So can you tell us a little bit about you, Ernest? See, we're losing Roy already.
I'm back.
And just, I know you had a father who was in tribal governance, and that must have shaped the policy work that you're involved in now. And not to mention that you were a tour guide in your ancestral lands and on those parklands.
Yeah, my great grandfather, his name is Chief Jack House. He was the last traditional hereditary chief for the Ute Mountain Ute Tribe. He died in 1971, and that title died with him. When we signed our tribal constitution in the 1930s, it changed our tribal leadership. We were forced to move to a voting democracy, like a lot of other tribes, to be federally recognized, right? And I think we then changed to a chairman council, 7-member governing council. But my father, he grew up with his grandfather, the chief, took care of him, was an interpreter for him to go to DC to fight for water rights, hunting rights, things like that. And then when my father got to be, older, he ran for tribal leadership, and he served for 35 years in tribal leadership, chairman, council capacity. He's really the longest serving elected official in my tribal community. And you're exactly right. I mean, I grew up going to these boring water meetings, but at the time I didn't know. Later on in life, I would have had the huge opportunity and honor to be the director of Indian Affairs for the state of Colorado. And they came back. And not only that, I had a chance to work on some of those. And all that stuff was so helpful because I was learning from not just my father, but huge tribal leaders like Leonard Birch of the Southern Indian Tribe, and all these other tribal leaders that have come through. And I've just had to be able to have a front row seat to just listen to these people and hear these concerns. And that's definitely what I tried to bring in the advocacy that I tried to bring. And I mean, I couldn't have a better teacher. Unfortunately, he passed away in a tragic motorcycle accident in 2011. He retired in 2010, finished his last year, and then unfortunately he passed away in 2011 at the age of 65. But I kick myself all the time, and there's videos of him, and I have a lot of information from him. But you look back, right? I mean, hindsight, 2020, you try to look back and you try to think, man, I wish I could have had more. And I think that's the same thing that I felt with the response with COVID, like with our elders. I mean, like, man, if there was a way that we at least knew to be able to capture more of these opportunities, if it was video, if it was, just voice, I mean, whatever the platform was, maybe this is an opportunity that might change that direction to hear more and capture more of that information so we never lose it.
Yeah. But if I'm hearing you right, it's only been 2 generations before you when Ute Mountain Ute were being governed by a traditional form of government. It's not like it was long, long ago. A lot of people think about tribal nations and issues of like repatriation and what have you, and they think that it's somehow archaic or that our traditional practices are archaic. But you're saying that really it was your grandfather who was a traditional hereditary chief, and it was only your father who was the first kind of regular, democratic type leader, different from your traditional ways. I mean, that to me, that's kind of amazing and incredible that it was, to see that, and then to see that in you. I'm talking to you. You had a direct connection with your father and your grandfather. I mean, that's just amazing to me, and I don't think I'm not doing well at putting it into words, but that's pretty incredible, and pretty incredible that that's part of your story, that's part of who you are, and that you're still that closely connected with that traditional way.
Well, I appreciate you putting it that way, because I think oftentimes all that comes back, and it's such an important force. When I go back home is when I feel it the most. And I think it wasn't until I moved to Denver and I was in my early 20s of visiting with families that grew up off the reservation and grew up in Denver, and the reservation was in like Oklahoma or Arizona or on the East Coast or West Coast. And then I felt how fortunate I was that I could just drive 8 hours away to go to my own ceremonies that I could be a part of. And I had the fortune to be able to do that. And I think now we're seeing the emphasis of why that's so important. This generation of young people growing up in urban settings, kind of like what Tommy Orange talks about, and They're There, and these other efforts around a large population of American Indians living in urban areas today. Denver is one of those. I mean, in the 2010 census, over 70% of the U.S. American Indian population lived off of the reservation. Over 70%. I think by the 2020 census, when the numbers come out, that 70% is going to be over 80%. And it's going to continue to grow. And I think what that does is it puts pressure on our tribal communities, because what's going to be there if the growing population moves to urban areas like Denver, Salt Lake, Phoenix? Here in the West, those are communities I'm more used to. But I'm also at the same time worried and trying to help, bring those economic development opportunities to the tribes to offer more jobs, good paying jobs, so that your families can grow up there, or the school systems, because that's really what I think my father was also seeing. My father fought for water rights and was able, along with other tribal leaders for a long time, was able to secure that. Not very many tribes have been able to do that. I think of now looking in this next administration, especially with the Interior and Congresswoman Holland, to be able to, there's so much opportunity to have these conversations. I know that I couldn't imagine the amount of pressure I think that would be, because here you have these years and years of being under DOI and all these, these underfunded mandate projects at policy level, at the federal government level. And that's been a huge crux to Indian country. And then you think COVID, I've often thought COVID has taken Indian country out at both knees, meaning economically and in healthcare. And I think that's there has to be find a way to change that. And so when I go back home, I think that's when I get a chance I have the honor of being able to go back home and talk with my relatives and be able to think about, all right, get centered again. Like, what was my father fighting for? What was my grandfather fighting for? What was, bring it back to reality.
Mm-hmm. That is so important and incredible. I was pausing to see if Roy would.
I haven't stepped in yet. I'm still listening.
Okay. All right. I won't feel guilty then for just keeping the conversation rolling. Just poke me or something, Roy, to stop. Okay. So how did you get started? Like, you're not one of these lawyer types, right? Roy has a problem with. I keep bringing.
No, it's not about. Just about everybody you bring on shows is your lawyer buddies, but
which I guess, Sheldon spotted up, is a good friend of mine. Shout out to Sheldon. I know he was on your show last year. Anyways, yeah.
I think what she's trying to say is, what's your background as far as how you got started versus, being from the law end of things. You came in just through tribal government family. Is that how you got involved in the work that you do?
Yeah. In fact, it all started with me taking an internship at the state of Colorado with an agency. I only knew the executive director at the time because had gone to a couple meetings with my father. I didn't really know a lot about the Colorado Commission of Indian Affairs at the time. And then I had a chance. I said, is that something I could intern with when I was at the time going to school at University of Northern Colorado in Greeley, Colorado. And that it kind of went from there. And then I had an opportunity soon I was done to move to Denver and then to jump right into the role. I was young when I started in that position. And I think about it now and there's so many things that I would have gone back and go, man, I wish I'd have done this different. I wish I'd done that different. But there was such an opportunity to learn from some amazing people. And at the time, I was a representative for the state. My father was still alive. He was still the tribal leader for the tribe. We had to have some very difficult conversations with, almost putting not the father-son relationship on pause, but if we were in a meeting and we were talking about state tribal issues, I had to recognize that not only was he my father, but he was also the leader of a sovereign nation. And technically, I was representing the state of Colorado, a state government, or representing an agency underneath, a state government. That made it hard sometimes. We went round and round about some debates on all kinds of different issues, but fortunately, 99% of the time we were seeing eye to eye. And these were things like huge issues like NAGPRA, Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act. I think that's why the Colorado Commission of Indian Affairs, a state agency geared towards Indian affairs in the state, was created in the 70s. The tribes protested the treatment, or a lack of treatment, lack of respect, and addressing Native American human remains that the state had in their possession. And I'm talking about hundreds, and over years. NAGPRA had not been enacted yet in 1990. And so, hearing and learning from these archaeologists, getting from these tribal leaders, getting this traditional knowledge and meeting this type of culture, that was really huge. And I think it helped frame that early part. By 2007, Colorado created we were the first state to create a protocol to address inadvertently discovered Native American human remains found on state and private lands. And what that means is, if you're out hiking in the mountains, you come across what you think might be, well, what you might see is either a human skull or human remain, and you contact the local authorities. And if it follows the process, if it follows the steps that we laid out, that eventually it would get to the state archaeologist and the Colorado Commission of Indian Affairs. And our agencies would coordinate, and we would consult with tribes, and the tribes would be the ones to make the say. It wouldn't be going on shelves. It wouldn't be stuck in a box in a secured warehouse anymore. It was going to be handed to the tribal leadership or to the tribal representatives, like it should have been a long time ago. And so, I mean, that's where I got the start of leading into these huge, I think, momentous at the time for me and for the country around consultation, state tribal collaboration. And so that's what I've taken and brought over to Keystone. So, but I, on a personal note, my family, I have, we love to go outdoors. We love to go back home in the Southwest. And I think has it not been for them supporting me along the way, there's no way we could have been able to do this. But that's really where it has started and culminated from.
Yeah, I know I've gotten a lot of shit from in a good way, tribal leaders, just being an attorney. Being an attorney, you have to, in order to be properly barred by any state, you have to make an oath, a swear to the state for your allegiance, and that you will protect the state and the government above all else, which I did with my fingers crossed. That's how I dealt with it, because to me, in a way, it was offensive. It's one thing to tell me that I'll uphold law. It's another one that I'm swearing any kind of allegiance to. Are two different things. I've had a lot of discussion with folks about that conflict of being Indigenous and working for other governments. And I know that must be something you've dealt with when you were working for the state. And then now in your position with Keystone, of the kind of work that you all do that I hope we can get into as well. But any kind of interesting conversations that you had with folks about that, or have you gotten sometimes?
Well, let's just say that the governor's legal counsel. So I worked at the commission at the state for 12 years, and that was for 3 different governors, 4 lieutenant governors, and various tribal leaders. And I first started out under Republican administration, not because it was, I was actually neither party and continue to be unaffiliated. So it wasn't any type of allegiance to any political party or anything like that. It was just the internship process and whatever else. But what I found so amazing, and then my last 2, I was under a Democratic governor and lieutenant governor. But we were able to move the conversation from the very beginning, and it increased more and more and more. And I think a lot of it was because of the lack of awareness and perhaps even the education that a lot of our state agencies had at the time. I mean, the commission was only growing and getting better and better and better. And the state tribal relations, and obviously I'm coming from a state tribal relation background. I don't think we give enough emphasis or put enough emphasis on the importance of state tribal relationships. Clearly, there is a federal tribal relationship. And as an attorney, I'm not one, but Shannon, I know you are, and I don't know if Roy is or not.
Hell no.
So I completely, I get and I respect tribal sovereignty. I think that is the basis and what we have to continue advocating for. But I feel like so much of what we've seen either pushed up to the Supreme Court or federal policy changes, they've started at the local level. Yes. They've started at the lack of understanding between a state agency and a tribe. And I also think that when Congress passes laws, federal laws that are supposed to come to Indian country, small communities like Toyoak, Colorado, at the Ute Mountain Ute Tribe, for healthcare or whatever that is, then some of it's funneled through our state agencies. And if that state agency doesn't know who to contact at that tribal office, those funds are being held up. They're not getting to the intended recipient. And who is the one losing on that battle? That's us. That's our tribal communities. So I think that the tribal state relationship was so important. And so I will tell you that I think one of the biggest impacts that I saw was working with former Governor John Hickenlooper, now a state senator for Colorado. Mm-hmm. And funny name, Hickenlooper did a short stint as running for president. And he knew a lot about the Sand Creek Massacre. He was well versed on it. He had opened up one of his prior lives. He had opened up a bar in downtown Denver called the Wynkoop, named after Ned Wynkoop, who was an ally to the tribes. And in fact, during the 1800s around Sand Creek, in fact, the federal government because he had a good relationship with tribes and worried about his allegiance, had moved him out of state, I think to Kansas or something. So he wasn't around during the time he wasn't at the Sand Creek Massacre. But so in talking with the Governor Hickenlooper, I found out all the stuff about it. Well, anyways, we've been working with the Cheyenne Arapaho tribes on ways to elevate the conversation. We put together a commemoration. First time we had tribal members out from outside of the state sit on a commission. The governor had okayed this whole process. And anyways, we had a conversation about what we could do that year. The year was 2014. It was going to be the 150th commemoration of the Sand Creek Massacre. And every year, since I'd been a part of the commission, I think even since the late 90s, the tribes had done a healing run where their youth run from where the site is in Eads, Colorado to downtown Denver. That takes like 3 days to do that. And it's snow, rain, sleet, hail, doesn't matter. Day, night. I was blown away. I'd never seen anything like that before. And let alone, I'd heard a little bit about the Sand Creek Massacre, but having the opportunity to work with these tribes and learn from these and see these youth and just be a part of that, it was just huge. So in talking with the governor, we talked about reconciliation at a state level. And I had an opportunity to have an honest conversation and saying, look, the reality is we as Native people, we don't throw the term reconciliation around very lightly because we may never get there. And I completely understand that. But I feel that a state, especially if there hasn't been an apology provided, we can't even begin reconciliation should even be in our mouths, a part of our lexicon, if we're not even discussing the apology to start the conversation. And I think that was really a moment we'll always remember. It ended up being Governor Hickenlooper at the time issued the first apology to the Cheyenne Arapaho tribes on behalf of the state of Colorado's role. And ever since then, we worked on land to transfer to the Sand Creek National Historic Site, which is managed by the National Park Service in Eads, Colorado. And now there's conversations around memorial at the state capitol. There's conversations around changing the name of Mount Evans, which is a 14er, which is something that 14ers are highly sought after in Colorado. Everybody hikes them and, whatever else. But now we're talking about place names. Now we're talking about true history because a lot of people did not know who was involved, how Evans was involved, what the culpability level of him and others. And so now it's interesting because over the last year with Black Lives Matter movement has been made aware a lot of these monuments of the Civil War era. What about our indigenous communities? And I think that conversation has also been going on, and I'm very happy that there's been space for that.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely correct with the local level importance, because our tribe, same thing, the Adais in Louisiana, it was all local intervention that started, and the same thing, it started with a letter of apology from the officials, and as you know, things grew from there. Now we're plugged up at the federal level as far as, you know, that moving forward, and has been for decades. But that's where it started, was at the local level. And so that work is very important, very important. And I think that more people from Indian countries like yourself should be getting involved at the local governmental level, you know, to actually start to interact. I mean, it's,
You know,
kind of a unique situation that you got to be where you were at to have negotiations with your own father, you know?
it really did. I mean, my father, and I've heard other tribal leaders say this as well too. So maybe it's from a consultation that he went to. Every time we'd say consultation, my father would cringe and be like, "Oh my gosh, go to another consultation with the feds. It's not going to go anywhere. I'm going to have to end up yelling at someone, and it's just going to, you know, people are going to storm out. It's going to be nothing done." And he would often say, in his quote, and other tribal leaders have heard as well, is, "If you're not at the table, you're on the menu." And I think for so long, Indian country, we know all too well, we've been on that menu. We've never been to the table. We've never been invited to the table, you know. And I think that, you know, it here. So in Colorado at the time, here I have the opportunity to talk to this governor. He's listening, he's understanding, he has a base knowledge of, he hasn't met with the tribal leadership yet. He's read up the history, so he knows that there was some wrong going on there, right? And now you have this opportunity to get tribal leaders in front of them. And I think that's the moment where these politicians or leaders at these state, local, federal level, when they actually open up their ears and they start to listen and they start to feel that and hear, you know, the true horror and horrific scenes, and the story and the passed down through families. I mean, the generations, it's crazy. But anyways, I say all that because that moment then led into us looking into, in Colorado, we had at the time in 2015, over 40 public schools, K through 12, that use some type of depiction of a Native American mascot, imagery, logo, or whatever. So now you're taking a federal an issue of the Washington team or the Braves or whatever it is at the professional, sports level. Now we're bringing it down to, wait, what does that mean for a local community? Well, how many schools in Colorado actually have that? And then we found out over 40 schools did. When we went to these communities, I mean, there's still schools that have them today. But over the last year, there's been a lot of those schools where I thought, I don't think they're probably going to change. A lot of them have changed and switched over. And so I think that, you know, at the moment, we're always planting seeds, right? We're planting seeds and hoping that they're going to change. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next week, maybe it's 5 years from now. But I ultimately, I truly believe it. Like, that's what I've been, and I know others have too. And that's what I've learned from, is trying to plant those seeds and fight for that change.
Well,
eventually.
Yeah, that's why it's so important that you were in there in the state. And, you know, I know there are folks that have difficulty with us being in the cabinet, in the president's cabinet, or in various leadership positions with local, state, and federal government. But it's so important for people in power to have to interact with us face to face. And so we need people, we need us in those positions. It's so important. And you've sacrificed a lot, Ernest, to take on those kind of roles. And I think it's so important. I can't imagine what it must have been like in your family with your father on the tribal side and you on the state. But grateful that you took that that difficulty and did well with it. And now you're in this Keystone Policy Center, which is a nonprofit. I'm going to bring it up real quick on, and I'll share the website. But here, let me bring it up and share screen. So here it is. Oh, look at that. Partners with the Ute Mountain Ute Tribe. How did they do?
Oh, yeah. There we go. And one quick thing about Keystone, at the end of the day, it's this, and everybody asks, what do you actually do? And I think that's a good question, because Keystone is involved in all kinds of different stuff, natural resources. My colleagues have done amazing things in conversations around very diverse issues like gene editing, and I'm sure things that that we talked about yesterday, like CRISPR-Con and stuff like that. Our whole point, though, is I have always thought of bringing diverse perspectives and to try to search for a common ground. I also look at that a little bit differently as an Indigenous person, thinking that it starts with that education. Like most of the time, the folks around the table don't know about our Indigenous education and don't have that Indigenous education or platform. So that's where I think that what I bring to it. So at the same thing, I've launched, when I moved over to the Keystone Policy Center, the director of American Indian Alaska Native program, work with tribes, taking the examples we did in Colorado that I just talked about, in consultation, education, healthcare, all this other stuff. We created tribal consultations that the state never had before. Now they do. Move those to other states that have had difficulty working relationships with their tribes. The other thing I want to also say is that Keystone, this is not their first time working in Indian country. Back in the 70s, the Keystone Policy Center brought some tribal leaders together, and the idea and the concept was formed to then create what was then turned into the Council of Energy Resource Tribes, CERT. And I, along with many of those tribal leaders, I grew up also one of my father's good friends with David Lester, who was the last executive director of the Council of Energy Resource Tribes. And CERT advocated with 25 plus tribes at the helm, making a determination on how they wanted to make the say on energy on their reservation, and then changing putting federal law together and policies to change that. CERT was a powerhouse and raised the level of sovereignty to a whole nother level, with not just Ute Mountain, Southern Ute, Crow, Navajo Nation. I mean, a lot of these tribes were involved in the conversation, and that all happened and started under the umbrella of Keystone, and then moved independently when CERT became an independent organization. So, it's also, I'm very honored to have people like John Echohawk on our board, and I talk with him often on ways to, just our work and what we can bring, raise the awareness of and bring more acknowledgement to.
Well, that's another thing we share. John Echohawk's on our board as well. He's on everybody's board, it seems.
He's probably on it. Yeah. I'm sure he's on everybody's board.
and John Echohawk, for those of you who don't know, John Echohawk is the executive director of the Native American Rights Fund, who does litigation on behalf of Indian country as a nonprofit org.
He's like the native godfather, right? Can we say that?
Well, his name, his affiliation and name have been brought up on like 3 or 4 shows from different guests, that work with him. So he's in everything.
So are you the only Indigenous person staffed at Keystone?
I am. Yep. I'm the only. When I came over, I said, I had the idea. I said, well, I want to start an Indigenous program, and now I'm looking at this next year. Last year, as crazy as it was, I think there was also an opportunity in the DEI space, diversity, equity, inclusion. I think we should also include Indigenous education in that arena, and cultural awareness and responsiveness and whatever else we want to add in there. But I think that's also an opportunity. I'm looking forward to building a team to focus on this and moving into this year. And we've also, I mean, with COVID, a lot of my work, I mean, as like a facilitator, bringing groups together when during COVID, groups can't come together, we can't travel. A lot of my work shifted to reach out to my tribe to see what we could do around COVID response. And so education, mental health, food distribution were areas that we focused on. And now we're working on broadband infrastructure with the Ute Mountain Ute Tribe.
That's good. That's great. And how is that type of work going? And do you know how broadband is doing nationally in Indian country? Do you have any on that?
I mean, you know, it was interesting because I think it was this last summer, that I was trying to highlight the importance of tribal communities that did not have broadband infrastructure. I mean, if the wind blows hard enough in my community, emails out. You know, that's the limit of the broadband structure that we have. And even when we're trying to do Zoom calls with state leaders and local leaders and talk about what the need, we couldn't even get to tell the need because we couldn't do this. And so obviously the phones, so we're more reliant upon just phone conversations. All that to say that you know, Navajo Nation is just right south of us. We border Ute Mountain borders on Navajo Nation, or right up to Navajo Nation. And so I think that, you know, there's a lot of interesting conversations and opportunities, I think, moving forward around regional approaches. You know, I think before we have looked at just what needs to work, what needs to happen for tribe X at this moment, at this time. Yeah. You know, what happens when how about food delivery systems, which are almost non-existent in Indian country, at least in the Southwest, rural reservation communities in the Southwest, where we need that food. You know, when you have big box chains on off-reservation communities like Farmington, New Mexico, or Gallup, New Mexico, or Flagstaff, Cortez, how can you bring those food delivery systems into the tribal communities and make them consistent and sustainable, utilizing tribal farms? I mean, people are already working on this and have been working on this, but I think it's just even elevated the conversation more. And so I think that's one area that we've been focusing on. And so I think that it's been an ongoing importance. I think it will be for us in my program at Keystone moving forward for sure.
Which you started talking about food, and there is some really interesting stuff on Keystone Policy Center site. I'm going to bring it up, as well as the conversation about food and gene editing. And so let me bring this up, and I'm going to share the website because there's some great videos for people if they want to get a little more information on this issue. But gene editing, what we're talking about perspectives on gene editing, isn't our perspective no? Is it that simple, or is this a complex issue we should be thinking about?
I completely agree, and I don't know if that first video is Crystal Sosi, who's amazing, and she has a lot of great information out there. You know, when I came to Keystone had already been, my colleagues there had been working on this, an effort called CRISPR-Con, and it's bringing these researchers and scientists and all these different leaders together to talk about the CRISPR technology and the gene editing technology. And for folks that don't know, CRISPR is a biological tool, really, that edits human genes and has been doing that. And there's been highly controversial because, especially when it goes into the area of editing human genes, you know, what does that mean? That means, you know, creating your person, your kids, whatever that might be. But the other thing too is in these conversations, It was also related to agriculture. It was related to health, conservation, editing, gene editing from a sense of cultivating agriculture or sustaining, ensuring that certain foods have been around, maybe as an impact to climate change or as a reverse, response to the impacts of climate change. But what I found interesting out of all this, and I'm not the scientist on this, but it was that the Keystone was really trying and seeing firsthand that there were no indigenous voices. And there's really trying to figure out, okay, why is that? But B, can we better understand that? And would they be willing to share why? And I think that's exactly like the video that you showed is Crystal and some of her colleagues at this last CRISPRCon. Normally it's an event held for a duration of days. And last year, let's see, it would have been 2019. It was held in the Netherlands. They've looked at doing it in Africa. It's been here, obviously, in the United States. But this conversation is worldwide. And it also relates to a lot of the conversations and concerns, questions, but big concerns that we as tribes have, right? Navajo Nation has put a moratorium in the past on gene editing and genetic research. United Nations Declaration on Rights of Indigenous People at the United Nations level, UNDRIP, has had a response to this, and all to say that we just haven't had the indigenous voice that is needed in these conversations. If it's to slow down, to stop, whatever the perspective is, but especially indigenous cultures in like South America and conversations that I've now been a part of around not just gene editing, but gene drives and ensuring that there's indigenous voices to give their perspective. It's not my perspective. It's we need to get those different cultures there to the table. And that's exactly what we're trying to do with this effort. And so this last CRISPRCon, which was actually 2 months, all virtual, series of meetings, Crystal Sosi, who was also with Native Biodata Consortium, you should check their website out, are huge voices in Indian country on this. Again, that's Native Biodata Consortium. And I can't thank them enough for engaging in this conversation because it's very tricky. It's, Shannon, we've talked about international repatriation efforts like NAGPRA here in the United States, what's going on in other countries like Europe, especially when you see like places like we've seen in the past where Paris has been, having these online auctions of Hopi masks and all these other things, all these cultural items that have been taken and sold and are being sold across, over in the EU. How do we get those returned? Part of that conversation, it involves all of this. I think all of it is linked at some level.
Wow. Just such a, to me, and it was this, and the first time I heard about CRISPR, I think I've heard about it a long time ago, but recently I think there's a Netflix or a documentary out. I think it's called Human Nature, or there might be a separate documentary just called CRISPR about it. It's fascinating technology, and to think that we could alter ourselves and other things so simply, and how dangerous that could be. But at the same time, how incredible that can be. We were having a conversation about a Ute kidney, weren't we? Having creating a
they can make a Ute kidney.
Right?
Yeah.
Blood, I guess.
Well, and I've talked to some of these researchers, these indigenous native researchers, who have been advocating for in this space and saying, we need to have tribes a part of this conversation. And, that was part of the conversation of one day, could there be, if you needed a Cheyenne, kidney or a Arapaho in your tribal community, could that be there one day? Could that be the possibility of, and this is the other thing too, is that when I look at this, is that I think we've seen throughout history is that when we're not at the table and we finally get to the table, they're already light years ahead of where we are, right? And it's taken us time to not only catch up, but then to be able to engage in that conversation at that moment, because we're always playing catch up. And I think that this is something that doesn't even have ethics around it. There's a lot of controversy around should this research have ethics around it. Same thing like extraction of ancient DNA, which goes on right now worldwide. And I think in the archaeology and anthropology community, they'll tell you around, where those ethics lie or where they don't lie. And I think now that we have platforms like Ancestry.com, 23andMe, or, that type of stuff, it's like, now there's this huge interest of, hey, I'm Native American too. I'm where do I, like we were joking, where do I get my free money?
Where do I get my check? Where's my check? Hey, and there's some really good jokes. I'm thinking, I'm not going to say them, but I was just thinking of some really, we're talking about body parts. I was thinking, man, there's some good jokes in this one here, but I'm going to leave it alone. I'm going to keep it a family show right now.
Yeah. So it's definitely been, I'm glad to see that there's that engagement by voices now, but we need to go much further than that.
Now, I mean, I don't know much about the technology. Now that we've had a couple conversations, I'm going to dig deeper into it, and I'm going to watch some of those shows and kind of geek out on it. I seen a show about, like I was saying, talking about a mammoth that they had pulled up, and they were talking about I heard them talk about the CRISPR technology, because they're trying to repopulate the woolly mammoth or whatever, and I think that's part of that whole project or whatever they're doing.
A good thing to do. Don't we need some woolly mammoths?
Yeah. Let's have some woolly mammoths,
like Jurassic Park, right?
Yeah.
The movie.
I mean, it's cool. It gives everybody something to do, and whatever. But I mean, is it necessary? But what I was thinking when you were saying this, and I was thinking about Indian country, I was thinking, okay, so now maybe we've got a way that people who have a certain amount of blood quantum, with tribes that are blood quantum required to, hey, well, I'm going to have some kids now that are going to actually make the cut. So I'm going to have them, genetically modify my kids so that my generations start getting back into the gene pool here, And I'm wondering if that's something that can be manufactured and start to, be incorporated into Indian country. I mean, right? I mean, you're talking about some of these tribes with high dollar, casinos and kicking people out of the tribes. Well, how they're going to walk themselves back in now with some gene therapies on their kids,
I mean, that's a great question, because there you go, mind blown.
All I was thinking of is that, how there's like some stereotypes about Native men. Maybe we could like plump up their butts a little bit. Some other things.
See, I wasn't going to go.
Dad bod? Is that?
I wasn't going to go anywhere with that stuff, but you want to start making the jokes.
I'm going to go there. I can.
Some butt. You want some butts on the Indian men.
Butt there. We need some.
Oh,
there's nothing
Shannon,
worse
you
than a
didn't go there. You didn't go there.
Sorry.
Let's see. So let's go to the chat room and change the subject here. And there was a question that I wanted to bring up that somebody brought up earlier that we hadn't addressed yet. Let's see. Is it gone?
And if anyone wants to say here on the butt thing.
Oh, so Jim Diamond also answered my question earlier for when we were talking about a constitutional amendment to get rid of lobbying powers or what was it? The electoral college. Jim said it takes a three-quarter of state legislators have to vote to amend the Constitution and 2/3 vote of Congress. So it's a big ass deal to get something done there. But yeah, so that answered that question. Let's see. The world's eyes are being open. let's see. I want to find that question real quick. There it is. Back to resourcing the tribes and bringing business to tribes. And other than what we were talking about gaming earlier, you touched on that a little bit. But one of the questions we had was speaking to hemp. And of course, and Colorado is now a legal state completely for recreational use and everything of marijuana, not just hemp. I know they're two different things, two different industries, but they did fall under the same umbrella for a long time. JD said he was part of the legalization efforts of cannabis, and my question is directly related to hemp. It's my understanding that the powers that be are now trying to blame the farming of this crop to water shortages in and around Colorado. Can you comment on this?
That's a good question, JD. I'm not sure where folks are blaming the water shortages around the hemp production. I know that we've had active conversations when I left the state in 2018 with both Ute tribes around supporting hemp cultivation efforts. I know both tribes have been just, investigating that, researching that, see if it would be profitable for them. I mean, my tribe's first tribal enterprise was a farm and ranch business. That's one that we continue to have today. I mean, majority of our alfalfa hay, which majority of our farm and ranch operation is 80% alfalfa hay that's sent to other states. And with a tribe that's already solidified their water rights, I mean, hemp production and cultivation is huge. That should be on the list for tribes like mine that have water rights settlements finalization. I will say that there was an interesting article back, I want to say that this last weekend in the New York Times about Colorado's our water fights right now, and just water in general in the West and how it relates to the Colorado River, the upper basin, the lower basin, 10 tribes agreement and user group is also a coalition. That's a huge part of that. But every state, Colorado, Arizona, Utah has, folks that are negotiating what they're going to advocate for. And I felt like, here is this article talking about a good overview of the impact and some very interesting conversations happening in Colorado right now around taking water rights and removing them from that community and putting it in other parts of the state or selling it downstream. Those are huge changes from things that like the state put together, which is a Colorado water plan, involved our perspective of our two Ute tribes, because everything that the state did obviously does not, here in Colorado, does not impact the tribes, as the tribes are their own sovereign nation. So the state laws do not cross tribal lands. But I will tell you that, the tribes are still involved, and I don't know where they are about the hemp cultivation effort, but if it's an economic opportunity, I can guarantee you that they're looking at it, and they have the water, at least at this point. If we continue the drought that we have in Colorado, which JD, I'm sure you are well aware of, we had a great snowfall last year, but that we need 10 more of those. And I think the more and more we're seeing the impact of a drought season, I mean, our wildfires this year were huge. And so I've even gone on record. I've written op-eds before around the new 30 by 30 plans the different states are advocating for. Congresswoman Holland has also supported resolutions supporting 30 by 30 plans. It's an effort to conserve 30% of our natural resources by 2030. And but I think that there should be an indigenous 30 by 30 response. More and more tribal leaders are putting these platforms together. The incoming Biden-Harris administration has also talked about launching a 30 by 30 effort because of the impact and what we've seen on the impacts of climate change. So, I mean, right at the 2018, especially Colorado being the first state to legalize, recreational marijuana. And I have a good friend who oversaw that whole effort and has also been talking to tribes, California, across the U.S., around how that looks, knowing that there's still some states out there that have not followed suit. I mean, there are tribes that it's been a huge economic boom for them.
What does that really mean, 30 by 30? 30% of what we have conserved today, or what does that number really mean? What does it express?
It's a good question, because right now, I mean, here in Colorado, at least for our what we're looking at, is our efforts and policies only look to conserve around 10% of that. So we would need to drastically.
Does that mean, though, 10% of what so if 50% of the resources in Colorado were intact, so that means that 30% of that 50% would be saved, or 10% of that. I mean, how are they even measuring this? To me, it just seems like just a play with math and make it what you want. And what is it really saying? What are we trying to achieve?
Right.
Instead of this, nice, cute little saying.
Yep. This nice ring to it.
Yeah.
and the other thing too is, like, for my perspective, like we were talking about earlier, when I went back home, in my home back on my reservation is about 15 miles from the Utah border, and I'm 2 miles from the parking lot of Canyon of the Ancients National Monument. It was signed in to under the Nixon of Clinton administration, and in 1990, or excuse me, 2000, and it's been a huge opportunity, because down there, Mesa Verde, I mean, it's one of the most densely populated areas in the United States, where there's such a huge influx of ancestral Puebloan artifacts, ruins, things like that. Mm-hmm. But it's also big to oil extraction, and I also recognize that our tribes are also extractive industries at the same time. So we have to be real about that too. But I also think that the renewable energy efforts that especially my tribe has been able to launch, is our first solar farm this last year, looking at our second solar farm. Those have been hugely helpful. And I think that they're looking more and more into not just how we look at traditional oil and gas. I think it also should include bio. It should include hydro. And I mean, the efforts of what CERT, Council of Energy Resources Tribes, was advocating back in the 70s, that just effort needs to come back and launch even more to have tribes at the driver's seat.
Right. And is that solar with your nation? Is it actually serving your nation, or is it just being powered out?
Nope, it's serving our nation. I mean, I think that's the dream one day, right? To have an electric co-op to be able to sell off the reservation. But right now, the focus has been on reservation to be able to get energy and supply to homes, just like broadband.
Nice. And I think that's one of the most important things that tribal leadership can do, is create that sustainable resource on tribal lands that serves tribal lands, because quite often we've been screwed, because most of the time it's a company coming onto our lands and piping our resources out, or we're doing gravel and we're digging up gravel, and where does it go? It goes off the res. We're selling our land, truck by truck, right, off the reservation, and to be able to keep it on tribal lands first, including broadband, creating a tribal utility, providing that resource for the nation, and then potentially serving others.
Be the Elon Musk of Indian country.
That's the truth.
So Ernest, I just got text blasted here by you and I. It's a small world. You and I have a mutual friend.
Ooh.
He grew up and went to high school with you. Apparently, I'm not gonna dox his whole name, but you would know him as Ken. Maybe you remember, and this might jar your memory. He said just to tell him, ears, Dumbo, or radar. He might remember me.
That's awesome. Well,
he said he was a little younger than you. He said he was a little younger than you, but you guys let him hang out with the older kids, the older cool kids.
The older cool kids. Oh, that's awesome. A small world, that's for sure.
Yeah. He's still out in Colorado. He says
Nice.
he caught you up here. He was like, "Whoa, that's my man. That's my man, Ernest."
Oh,
So
it's
cool.
yeah. No, thanks for sharing that, Ken. Hope you're doing well, buddy.
Yeah, he is. He's doing really well. He's doing really well. Just to let you know, he is. Cool,
Good.
cool.
Good.
So now the one thing I would like to interject here, and
Sure.
and if you these things that you are doing and looking at, and I keep talking about this because I've worked for 30 plus years in industry in Southern California. You know, the fifth largest economy in the world, and I was a millwright by trade, so I moved a lot of heavy equipment and in and out of industries and whatnot here in Southern California, and I seen something that's really taken a foothold, or is about to, and it's hemp plastics and what that's going to mean to industry. And I for one think that Indian country can really benefit from hemp plastics because they make different grades of hemp plastic, and it's readily available today. The problem with the hemp situation was they legalized it and said, okay, have at it, farmers, grow some hemp, and there was no infrastructure or industry ready to take the harvest, and so all of it just rotted in the fields. They were never able to get it to market because they couldn't get that hemp and the oils and the seeds and all of it to manufacturers. There was no processing facilities or manufacturing facilities. So these facilities that can take that hemp and turn it into the actual plastic products, the pellets, the polymer material that goes into the machines to make the products, those are things that I think Indian country should be looking at. So any tribes or anything that ever catch me saying this, look into that, because it's a renewable source, especially with all these things like biodegradable straws being needed, because there's different levels. You can actually have a biodegradable plastic all the way up to a durable plastic that'll last for, in just like any other plastic. So there's a lot of different levels of it, and it is a renewable source that can, from harvest to manufacturing all the way to the customer. There's a lot of different industry all the way in between it. I think it's going to be a huge growth industry over the next couple decades.
That does sound that sounds really interesting. I'll have to look into that. I'd heard of it a little bit of it as it comes to building supplies, like construction. For homes, walls. Is that
hempcrete? You're talking about hempcrete?
Maybe that's what I'm talking about.
Which is a whole nother product made of hemp. But there's literally so the process of making any plastic item is what's called an injection mold unit. They feed these pellets into the machine, and these pellets are thrown into a mold. The mold pops open, the plastic parts pop out. Whether it's a straw or car parts or parts for a computer, whatever it is, these plastic parts are pumped out. But they've made these polymer beads out of hemp now, and you can literally make plastics at any desired level. So like, say for instance, a straw, you want to get rid of these paper straws that aren't working, that are turning into limp noodles as you're drinking your iced tea or your Coca-Cola or whatever. Well, they've got, now you can make a hemp plastic straw that after a week or so is going to biodegrade, and it's going to be as solid as plastic.
Right.
Or you can make products that are going to last, like that you need to put inside of a television or in a car part somewhere, that are going to just continue to last until they're broken or destroyed, Mm-hmm. So there's different grades of it. And these polymers are probably, manufacturing plants for these polymers is probably going to be a big deal, because they can grow the hemp. They know how to do it. And it's like they were saying in the chat room, is ditchweed. It's, they just throw the shit on the ground and it grows, and it grows fast. And the products work. There's just no manufacturing facilities to handle so the farmers aren't going to grow it if they can't sell it.
Mm-hmm.
And they did that just 2 years ago when they legalized it. All the farmers went, hell yeah, and they grew it, and they're like, oh wait, there's nobody to buy it. And all this. That's why we see CBD oil everywhere. Everybody's got CBD in everything, because there's so much of it. it's all they could have done with it because they don't have any other outlets. Now, if there was other demand, if there were other things like hemp plastics and hempcretes and all these things that are getting ready to be developed, if they had manufacturing plants, then man, those farmers can go nuts and do whatever they want. And I think Indian country should take advantage of that. I really, really do, because it fits within it just fits within, our beliefs, taking care of the earth and doing things the right way. But it also supplies us with a means to go to work and to put businesses on the res. Because, I remember, my elder telling me, it's like, hey man, put a damn McDonald's on there or something, put something on the res so that people can go to work and do something, and people need jobs. And so putting an industry like that inside of the res would be a good thing, putting people to work, so just something to think about,
I wrote that down, and I will definitely be bringing that up to our tribes here, because I think, especially when you have a lot of the land and the ability to be able to utilize water, water just so important. I mean, I know we all know that, right? And even the battles that we've seen in Indian country over either protecting it, getting it, whatever it might be. But then when you actually have it and see that there are policies that are not enabling you or supporting tribes to be able to grow that economic development, be it this or whatever it might be. I mean, that's huge. So I definitely will bring that up. Thanks for that.
But we got to be smart, right? We got to be smart. Yeah. And I believe Indigenous peoples have always been smarter than, kind of Western European ideology when it comes to agriculture, when it comes to water and conservation and all of those issues. We have to, if we're going to have these big hemp farms, this big one monoculture crop, we've got to do it in the right way. We've got to protect our soils, because that's where we'll lose water and we'll lose the ability for our lands to be sustainable. So there's a lot of work being done now to support climate change or climate changes, climate protection, by looking at our soils and doing agriculture and farm industry, the big old farm industry stuff differently. And we're finding that that's been a big, a big problem for why climate change is happening, is that we've overgrazed, we've overfarmed, and all the soil is basically turned into worthless dirt that can't hold carbon, that can't feed itself, and just goes up into the sky. So,
I completely agree, 100%. And in fact, seeing is that JD's post there, like it is this recognition of also going back, right? That originally we were doing that, and we have been doing that, and we've been green before green was cool.
And back, it wasn't that long ago, and we still have, and I'm sure it's been those traditional people who've known that all along, and that Indigenous knowledge can still help support and kind of turn us in the right direction. And I think hopefully we're coming up onto a new era where we are at the table, where people like you are making sure we're at the table, and we're bringing those old technology back to be supported and support everyone, not just our communities. But that's where we got to start.
I agree. Well said. Yeah. Could not have said that better.
Yeah, every once in a while I do okay. I love that skateboard you got back there.
Yeah, I got to give a shout out to my buddy Walt Poirier and Murph with Wounded Knee Skateboards, and they've been a huge effort to bring to build skate parks in Indian country. Walt Poirier and his team have been doing that through Stronghold Society. They've been here in Denver. They launched a huge Skate for Life jam at the downtown Denver skate park, bringing in different tribes, non-tribal groups too. Hey, if you skate, bring out your board. I'm going to give them a shout out because they've gifted me these over the years. But I mean, and also we've seen like skateboard deck art, also in museums and something like that. But it's also cool to see indigenous skateboard companies start to creep up too. And I've seen some amazing artists doing that as well in Indian country. Here's another one that actually talks about land progression, land loss progression.
Wow.
So anyways, they're I appreciate what they all do for Indian country. We just also put a new skate park at Southern Ute, our sister tribe, Southern Ute country down in Ignacio, Colorado. Their kiddos going to be jamming on some skate parks here too. So yeah, the more whatever stuff we can get kids and youth outside to just to be themselves, to support what they're doing, to have a connection with the culture. It is amazing. We always hear this walking in two worlds, right? And we're going to see, and they're probably already out there, moccasins, on skateboards, and bands needs to set something up like that or something.
Sounds good. Sounds cool. I'm a skater. Wow, I don't skate anymore. I don't want to break
me neither
at my age. Just stay in the water now. Just surf. I'm surfing only. No more skating. Those days are over with. But yeah.
I wish roller skating was cool because I was like a cool roller skater, but
Sis,
really
roller skates have been gone for like 30 years. Nobody roller skates anymore.
It's coming back. All of those millennials, roller skating's coming back.
Okay. I could just see her out there backwards disco dancing and doing
the limbo, right? Wasn't that I used to remember loving that.
I met some of my first boyfriends at the roller rink in Seminole, Oklahoma.
Oh
yes,
at the bowling alley, and the roller rink. Yeah, they got a guy out here in Venice Beach that there's a group of them actually that they bring their boombox out there and they play the music like old 70s like disco stuff, and then they got this 4-wheel skates because everybody uses, they're called inline skates now.
Yeah.
And but they get out there with their 4-wheelers and they do the old disco dance and stuff, and they're like 60. All those guys are like 60 and they're out there doing their thing.
Colleen mentions roller derby, and I would love to be in roller derby. But I think my bones, I don't think I can handle it anymore.
You got to have a roller derby name. Skinny Mini Shannon. You got to have a roller derby name.
Well, so what would it be?
Skinny Mini Shannon. Oh. You never watch roller derby. You never watch roller derby. Because roller derby's like the announcer dude is like he's all into the names and calling them what, and they come and they attack each other and knock the other girls down and bust their teeth out. Yeah. That's good stuff.
Oh, yeah. That's good stuff.
I think that's something Indian country could do,
Can you imagine a group of Indian girls doing roller derby? Oh my God. Nobody would want to have. Oh,
I feel like we would win the championship every year. We'd be,
Take it.
Well, Ernest, I feel like, your portfolio and the work that you're doing, the work that you've done, and the work that you're doing now at Keystone is so broad, and I don't want to leave anything out. Is there anything that we should be talking about and sharing with folks about what y'all are doing?
I appreciate the support, and because I think that I'm really honored to be at a place that's open to pushing that envelope, and even before this last pandemic, before we were having these conversations in communities around race relations. And so it's been an ongoing effort in it. And I think something that I've seen this last year is just even more of an emphasis to push that forward. And I feel like, you know, I feel like we have the attention of the non-Indigenous community to what is going to be our response, what is going to be the conversation moving forward. And so I look forward to just many more of these conversations. I get excited about it. I mean, that's what drives me. And I'm glad that I have a place to be able to support that and think in broad terms. Having said that, though, it also is very important that we support our youth that are coming up, that have the ability to get out there, have the support to be able to get into these conversations and into these networks, using our spheres of influence to be able to help them, you know, be that voice. It's going to be huge going forward. I think that's the only way we're going to be able to maintain that and actually see change, right? Not just some moment in time. I would hate for us to look back 20 years and be like, oh man, we missed our opportunity like we did, you know, whenever. I truly think that this needs to be a moment. And so, yeah, I thinking about there's so many other stuff and things, but I think that all of it comes back. At least when I was at the state, I would say we work on a lot of different things, but at the end of the day, it was trying to change the public's perception of the American Indian, meaning that I don't want my next door neighbors who are non-native or whatever going into, or anybody I meet, thinking that Dances with Wolves is the only time that they watch, that they come across Indians, or maybe that now that they love the series Yellowstone, you know, they may want to learn more about Indians, you know, or where's my nearest tribe? How do I get engaged? How do I advocate and support their fight for water or sovereignty or whatever it might be? So I think that those are moments to be able to do that. And I want to make sure that people don't just keep us in the 1800s. They don't just keep us in that black and white photograph in the local museum, that they see that, you know, there's skate parks being built, there's education efforts being built, there's curriculum, and there's people who are leading some massive change in their communities. And it just gets me jazzed, man. It gets me excited about the change.
Hemp plastics.
And hemp plastics, yes.
Yeah, right on, man. That's good to hear. That's the kind of thing that I like hearing. I like hearing that people are out there trying to, you know, speak to the people about the modern Indian, about modern Indian country, about who we really are and what we're trying to do and how we're trying to move forward in the 21st century as Indian people. You know, I really appreciate that. And I'm glad that excites you, because that gets me excited, because now younger people than me are getting excited about it.
And I love the fact, you know, a lot of people call the association and they ask various questions, and often we are referring them to, you know, why don't you do some research about tribes? And they're like, what? It's like, yeah, do a Google search. I bet the Ute Mountain Ute have their own website, and you can learn more about them if you just do a simple Google search of their name. You know, like that basic, like, you know, head explosion that most people don't know that you know, 574 federally recognized tribes, and that we pretty much all have a website. We all have, you know, tribal offices. We have administrators. We have lawyers. We have a governance structure. We have all these wonderful things, youth programs, some better than others, depending on our economics. But
right.
We all have a presence, and we all have a voice.
Yep.
And that they are the ones who should be asked, not
the
association, but people at the tribes, people from your nation and Roy's nation. We're the ones who should be asked those questions specifically, not some, you know, other entity or group. But yeah, I think it's so valuable what you're doing, and I think hopefully there's opportunities for the association to partner with your organization, Ernest, because you all are doing some really good work, and I think there might be some potential there in some of the work that you're doing. I certainly hope so in this new, what did you call it? The new 21st century, Roy?
The real 21st. We're finally getting into it. They held us back the first, part of it.
Right.
20 years.
This is our year.
Yeah.
All right.
So this has been an awesome show, Ernest.
Has been.
Lance is bringing up the point now about the Indian that got tased
While praying.
Trail.
Oh,
What state it was now. Went off trail, and the National Park Service ranger tased him. That's crappy. That wasn't in Colorado, was it, Ernest?
I don't believe it was. No, I do think it was in the Southwest here. I don't know if it was in Arizona or New Mexico or Utah, but I agree. And, I think at least the tribes here in the Southwest, the Ute Mountain, Northern Utes in Utah, or we refer to the Northern Utes, the Hopi, the Navajo Nation, the fight for Bears Ears has been such a big issue that I think a lot of people have heard. And, obviously since the Obama administration being able to finally getting that back to where it was proposed and originally discussed, one of the biggest components I think I felt, one of the biggest changes around the Bears Ears conversation under the Obama administration was that it was going to be one of the first times tribes and the federal government were going to have a co-management style and co-managed public land, former indigenous land, right? Having a seat at the table, going a step further, having that former relationship, that's huge. And so I'm looking forward to, here in Colorado, we have, if you've ever been here or other folks that come here, obviously we have such beautiful areas, but that education is ongoing. There are groups that are fighting really hard, doing really great work in bringing more attention to the indigenous history in their community. Places like Colorado Springs and up in the foothills and up in these mountains. And when people start learning that true history, that's that comes into play. We have a huge population growth in the Denver metro area, and there's a lot of concern by tribal members and community members around here. Are they going to have places to do sweat ceremonies? Are they going to be having locations to be able to go to? Can they be protected? Can they work with local government to be at the seat at that table? So, you talked about something that I bring up. I think that's one thing that we're seeing, at least I'm seeing more and more conversation and more communities, local governments wanting to reach out to tribes, have an interest in reaching out to tribes to bring them to the table. And so, yeah, I hope that we do more of that, and I hope that it leads to better policies that would hopefully be involved in this situation. It sounds like it might in New Mexico. Yeah.
Terrible. So we still got a lot of work to do, but
yep.
Hopefully there's a little stronger light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not a train. Literally and figuratively.
Right.
Chris, it's been wonderful to have you. Thank you so much for spending your Sunday evening with us. We really
thanks, Ernest.
appreciate it. Keep doing that good work, and hopefully we'll have you back. Let us know when something happens or you want to come back on the show and share.
I will do that. Absolutely. Roy, Shannon, thank you so much. In Ute, Tgoyak means thank you. Tgoyak to you both for the opportunity to be on here, and can't wait. I look forward to talking more.
All right. Thanks, Ernest. Take care, bro. All right.
Another what was this? 38?
38.
And the first one of this year.
First New Year episode.
Yeah. Well, I want to say thank you to all the folks in the chat and folks
Thank you, chat room.
If they're watching. We're so glad that you're here with us. Wish we could be in person, but our best to all of you. Please stay safe. Continue
Stay
to wear a mask. All of that jazz. Next week, Roy. Next week.
Next week,
Guess who we'll have as a guest?
who are we going to have as a guest next week?
I'm waiting for you to put your foot in your mouth or something like
Oh
that.
no, I'm not going to say anything. It's probably going to be somebody very, very special that you know.
It's not a lawyer.
Oh, I wasn't even thinking that.
Okay.
I get it now. What you were trying to do. Oh,
So it's not a lawyer. A wonderful woman and friend. Her name is Deborah Yepapapan. She's from the Jemez Pueblo, and she's Korean. She's up in Chicago, working at the Field Museum, and she's also a wonderful artist. And she'll be with us. To talk
sweet
about create
artist.
art. Who knows what? But she'll be with us next week.
Great.
What else should we
Thank the Association on American Indian Affairs.
thank you, Association on American Indian Affairs, for hosting a Red Hoop Talk. And please don't forget, we have had an increase in YouTube subscribers. We'd love to see you subscribe to YouTube.
Like, comment, and subscribe.
If you can't donate, if you can't support us, hey, you can easily like and follow our social media, and especially on YouTube. Be sure you comment. Tell us if you like it. Tell us if you don't like it. Hey, tell us if you have a guest you'd like to see on the show.
Yeah.
Please reach out and be a part of our family, our growing family. And we're looking forward to a great year, and maybe you'll see some changes here.
I hear Donald Trump's looking for a platform to get on.
Oh. So.
We might get banned. Can you even say that word anymore on social media? I don't know. All right, everybody. Have a great rest of your weekend, and we'll see you all next week on Red Hoop Talk. Bye-bye.